Well, hello once again and welcome back all my classic and vintage dirt bike fans, and thanks again for joining me here on my YouTube channel. Now in the past we've brought you many different makes and models of old vintage dirt bikes here on my channel, but this time we're going to look at something very rare and possibly even unusual. So stay with me for the next few minutes as we take a look at a Russian built Minsk Motovelo 125 from 1992. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have seen some really nice looking bikes here on my channel in the last few years, but this Russian built 125 has to be one of the ugliest bikes I've ever come across in recent years. Now, the bike's obscure looks is not the full story of this machine, and what is actually more intriguing is that every single component on this bike is Russian manufactured. But not only that, the entire bike is designed and constructed in just one factory. Now, this particular bike is designed and built at the Minsk motorcycle and bicycle plant in Belarus in Eastern Europe. Now we can see here that the bike is number 468 and was manufactured in 1992, although the bike tends to take on the look of it being manufactured in the 1960s. Nevertheless, the factory was founded in 1944 and virtually builds about everything on wheels, including these old scramblers, bicycles and other cheap motorcycles which are used by commuters. Now, the factory's 20,000 or so employees make it one of the biggest industrial units in Russia. Now, every single component, nut, bolt, washer, wheels, and even the tyres are made on site, and nothing is imported to complete the construction of this machine. The Minsk Motovelo factory also make a road-going version of this bike, naturally aimed at the many commuters who need cheap transport. And although this 125 engine looks similar to its road-going brother, this particular bike was fully developed as a serious motocross racer. Now, our featured bike belongs to Wolfsport owner Bill Brown, and not only does Bill have this machine in his collection, he also has at least another 4 or 5 of these bikes which are brand new and are still in their crates and have never been opened. Now, of course, the engine is a single cylinder 2-stroke piston port 125 engine, and as far as I'm aware it has a 4-speed gearbox with a standard wet multi-plate clutch. Now, when you get into the engineering of this motor, this clutch operating pushrod mechanism looks almost agricultural in its design, and it's akin to something that would be well at home on your domestic lawnmower. But then again, that was part of the design when they put these bikes together, as they knew their owners had limited budgets and that they would have to make them easy to repair in a normal run-of-the-mill garage or workshop. Now, even this unusual carburetor, along with its included jets etc., have yet again been manufactured within the factory, so in that respect you have to admire the company's ingenuity. Although I must say that when I first clapped eyes on this bike, I hadn't a clue what it actually was, and almost immediately I thought that someone had decided to use all the spare parts that were lying around his workshop to see if he could build a bike with what he had, and this was the result. Although at first glance I did think that the top end of the motor was from an old Suzuki 250. Now, of course, the front end of this bike has a pair of run-of-the-mill standard suspension forks, which don't look that strong, although as long as you're not doing any double tabletop jumps, they should be adequate to hold the front of the bike up. But I must admit, these front forks don't look very strong, although the rear of the bike is not much different, with this chrome molly frame and that drum brake on the rear. But certainly a very basic suspension setup that probably wouldn't look out of place on a budget road going motorcycle. But of course, as we mentioned earlier, every part of this bike is made in the one factory, and that also includes these wheels and these Russian tyres. The handlebars and triple clamps, once again, very basic items on this 1992 Russian machine. I mean, this was the type of machine that was selling in Russia at the time, and when you consider over the rest of Europe, Evolution bikes were making their mark with their fancy suspensions and power valves, etc. Although, to be truthful, I have to admit, it's quite an awful looking bike, and it looks to me like it's been in a severe motorcycle crash and has never been repaired. Although I suppose if you lived in Eastern Europe and had limited financial resources, then I can expect you would be very happy to own a bike such as this to get you around. And once again, all the control cables and this throttle gasser, all made in the one factory. Everything for this bike was manufactured in the one place. Now, of course, the plastics are not correct for this bike. These bikes would originally have come from the factory with steel mudguards, and Bill was telling me that the steel mudguards did not last very long, and he replaced them with a pair of these plastic mudguards and that front number plate. Now, yet again, just a standard set of rear suspension units, and nothing fancy on this bike, although these have been more than likely been taken from one of the Minsk road going machines. Now, the exhausts once again manufactured in the Minsk factory, and as per every other component on this very unusual machine. Now, some time ago, these little 125 bikes were sold in the UK as the Naval 125, and then their title was later changed to the Regent. Now, I'm not entirely sure if many were actually sold in the UK, as this is the very first one I've come across personally. But according to the owner, Bill Brown, they are not the greatest of machines. They are quite slow and noisy as hell, as Bill described them to me. But I suppose if you were looking for a cheap bike to head up the hills, you could do a lot worse than buying one of these very cheap Minsk motorcycles. Now, of course, once again, these seats were made in-house in the factory, as per all the other items on the bike, other than, of course, the front and rear mudguards, which I said previously were replaced because these bikes initially came with steel mudguards, but these rusted through pretty quickly, so these were replaced with the plastic mudguards. But quite a substantial seat on this bike, and looks very comfortable. Now, this particular bike is certainly not the most glamorous machine I've had to feature on my YouTube channel, and this featured bike will certainly not win any prizes at a vintage concourse event. But then again, that's what my channel is all about, in that we have to feature the good, the bad and the not so good looking, and this bike is certainly in a category all of its own. But nevertheless, if you'd like to own one of these Eastern European classics brand new and still in its unopened crate, then why not just give Bill Brown at Wolfsport a bell and see if he could do you a deal on the remaining examples he has left. But so there you have it, something different from the usual CZ, Maiko and Japanese machines I would normally feature here on my channel. A 1992 Minsk Motovelo 125 Scrambler. Of course, look out for more classic and interesting machines coming soon to my channel, with some new projects already in the pipeline. So thanks again for watching, and if you like what you see, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This video was brought to you in association with Wolfsport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road and leisure sportswear. Just visit their online website for more details.